Okay, part 3 of the Vril-athon. In the first video, I went through the story, the coming race, which is the source of at least the word Vril, if not the concept. In part 2, I was looking for anything that came before the coming race that referred to something called Vril, because in The Morning of the Magicians, they said that it was originated by somebody else. I could find no evidence of that. So until I learn different, the coming race, I'm going to presume, is the source of the term Vril, if not the concept of this kind of energy out there that can be captured and harnessed and whatever by advanced peoples. So we'll take it from there. So I wanted to get into who Edward Bulwer-Lytton was, because in Morning of the Magicians, they say Bulwer-Lytton, a learned man of genius, celebrated throughout the world for his novel The Last Days of Pompeii. This was one of his more successful novels. Little thought that one of his books in some 10 years' time would inspire a mystical pre-Nazi group in Germany. Yet in works like The Coming Race or Zanzoni, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, Zanzoni. I always want to say Zamboni, but it's not Zamboni, it's Zanzoni. He set out to emphasize the realities of the spiritual world, and more especially the infernal world. He considered himself an initiate with a capital I. So I believe they are referring to the Rosicrucians there. And if you look online, the English Rosicrucian Society, founded in 1867, so just a few years actually before the publication of this book, claimed Bulwer-Lytton as their grand patron, but he wrote to the society complaining that he was extremely surprised by their use of the title, as he had never sanctioned such. And they give a reference here. I wonder if I could find this, the supposed Rosicrucian Society. It looks like it's from an edited volume in French. Maybe Google Books can help us here. It'll just let us see a page view. Boy, the world would be such a better place if we could all just read anything we wanted to, wouldn't it? Sometimes I feel like if I just keep on clicking, something magical will happen. This precedes the meeting of the Rosicrucian Society on the 14th, and while Bulwer-Lytton makes scathing references to a sect pretending to style itself Rosicrucian, baffled by any secret sign. So anyway, what I'm getting for these little snippets that I'm allowed to see, thank you, Internet. It looks like, according to this anyway, that the English Rosicrucian Society, which formed just a few years before the publication of The Coming Race, wanted to kind of adopt Bulwer-Lytton, and it seems like he pushed back on that. So the guy was into the occult, clearly, as were tons and tons of people and writers and everything else in 1800s in England and Europe. But was he a member of some secret society? I don't know. You know, esoteric means hidden. So they're looking for, and they kind of proclaim themselves as guardians of hidden knowledge. And, you know, if you're an initiate, you need to go through the levels and have things passed on to you when you're ready. I don't know much about the Rosicrucians. Rosicrucianism is a spiritual and cultural movement that arose in early modern Europe in the early 17th century after the publication of several texts announcing to the world a new esoteric order. They have a website, very mystical, with the wings. For a secret society, they have a lot of stuff online. Member login. Oh, that's interesting. Join our order. I wonder what you have to do. Congratulations on your decision to become a member of the Rosicrucian Order. Let's apply. In what language would you like to receive your materials? I'm going to go with English. Which country do you live? I live in the United States. Dues paid annually. Oh, there's dues. What do you know? You will receive benefits that will all contribute to your physical, mental, emotional, spiritual development. Dues paid annually, $150 a year. Dues paid monthly, $15 a month. That $150 a year, it costs $170 to be a member of the Society for American Archaeology yearly. So that's more than the Rosicrucians. And I'm not sure that that membership contributes to my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual development. I'm kidding, archaeologists. I'm kidding. It's a fine organization. And then we can put in our credit card information. We communicate with members regularly via email. By signing up for membership, you are giving our permission to add you to our email list. So basically, you pay them $150 a year and they send you stuff. That's the benefits. Man. Rosicrucians. Okay, but maybe that doesn't really matter. Well, I guess it matters in that they wanted Bulwer-Lytton to be one of them because of his connecting his writings to the spiritual world. Apparently he did not want to be one of them, was not wanting to be associated with them. So I guess I'm willing to go forward with the notion, at least now until I learn differently, that he wasn't writing The Coming Race as some kind of secret transmission or advocacy of Rosicrucian knowledge or worldview or anything like that. The fact that they wanted him to be a member of an organization that only predates the book by a couple of years, and he apparently did not want to be associated with them formally, suggests to me that he really was just writing fiction. He wasn't intending to send some kind of secret message. There wasn't anything hidden or esoteric about the book in and of itself.
The book was enormously popular and even prompted a brief fashion for Vril products, one of which is still with us today. Bovril.
Bovril.
Bovine and Vril.
I was pronouncing it Bovril, but Bovril.
More disturbingly, although Bulwer intended the book to be purist fiction, some people took it seriously and believed that there really was a super race beneath us. The book was very popular amongst Nazi occultists, possibly who felt that an Aryan super race waiting to inherit the earth was somehow an attractive idea. In fact, it's even rumoured that Hitler authorised many expeditions into mines across Europe searching for an entrance to the land of the Vril-athon. His novels were being translated into many languages across Europe.
Bovril staff. Yeah, that's a nice little documentary, video documentary for those of you who are interested in this topic, 15 minutes or so. There's the interesting thing about him is he was apparently incredibly popular during the mid to late 1800s, but his name didn't kind of make the cut historically. So several generations have passed. Most people don't know who he is. He's not like, everybody recognizes the name Charles Dickens, Mary Shelley. Bulwer-Lytton is not a household name. There's a fiction contest named after him for writing what they say is hackneyed Victorian fiction. He was responsible for the phrase, it was a dark and stormy night and the pen is mightier than the sword and stuff like that. So he's in the culture, but he's not remembered as a great author, even though he was very popular at the time. That got me thinking, like, among our popular authors today, who's going to be in that same boat 100, 150 years from now? Stephen King, J.K. Rowling. I don't know. People sell a lot of books, but really. Anyway, so Bulwer-Lytton, interested in the occult, but not a member of occult secret societies, as far as we know. Did not come up with the original concept of this energy that was out there that could be harnessed, because that was floating around, especially with all the Eastern mysticism that was a popular subject of thought in Europe at the time. But he turned it into a white person thing with his underground Aryan ancestors or Aryan related peoples who were using it, and he gave it its own name, Vril, rather than calling it Chi or whatever. He died, I think it was 1873 or 1875. It was only a few years after publication of the book. So he was not around to see how his concept was used and incorporated into theosophy. I wonder if he ever drank Bovril himself. If I ever get 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to have myself a cup of Bovril to celebrate.
A supposedly superior beef extract, which was sold to consumers as a cheap substitute for beef from the 1880s onwards. Those that don't come from my own collection. Beef tea had long been a traditional homemade remedy for the sick. These entrepreneurs started to make industrial quantities of extract by heating carcasses gently with bones and fat removed, then condensing the sieved liquid to a thick brown gloop. All
right, good enough. You had me at gloopy. You can find discussions of The Coming Race. Some people think it is a good book. As I've said before, I thought it was kind of boring. When I looked at Bulwer-Lytton's history, he was a politician. He was also involved in colonialism. The threads in the book that emerged really clearly to me was, he was a stranger in a strange land. The main character was a stranger in a strange land, and he's evaluating these people and comparing them to his own society. He's trying to figure out where they go in this hierarchy of societies, what they're better at, what they're worse at. He wants to think about how he could take them over, whether they could take him over. There's the weird kind of sexual tension between the Vril-athon female who is wanting to marry the main character, the narrator, even though he's lesser. He's like a pet or a dog to them. There's so many like colonial themes going through this. Like, you can tell it was written by the mind of a colonialist. Is wanting to put things, in their progressive order from savagery to civilization. He's wanting to figure out relations of who's related to who, which societies are related to which through language. He talks a lot about their appearance, and he explains the reasons for the differences and their stature and things like that. It's very British, very colonialist, with this kind of overlay of mysticism and this non-Darwinian evolutionary kind of construction of, acquired characteristics. And it wouldn't have been called social Darwinism at the time because Darwinism wasn't even really a thing yet. Completely unsurprising, really. I think debatable really how original it was, but it was a huge seller. And obviously after his death, those ideas about Vril become incorporated into other things, which eventually take a pretty sinister turn. So I do not blame our friend Bulwer-Lytton. He's an interesting historical figure. I don't know that I will ever go and read his writing again. The guy was popular. He was an innovator. He apparently had a very, very stormy relationship with his wife, who became his ex-wife. You can read about that on your own. It's not really central to the story of Vril. There you go. I think the next thing to get into then is what happens after his death with the story, though I am interested. So we know about Bovril. There are other Vril-inspired products. It obviously had a cultural impact. I would be interested to know more about that. Blavatsky, who I think is writing in the 1880s or 1890s, I will get all that sorted out, embraces the concept of Vril. She calls it fictitious, but says that it's really describing something that's real anyway. So that's where it takes a turn. Oh, I did want to check one thing if I could find online. I want to make sure that he never actually mentions Atlantis. So if I could find the coming race in an online version, Project Gutenberg to the rescue again, Atlantis, anywhere? Make sure it's working. Let's just put in Vril. Okay, there's 180 mentions of Vril. No mentions of Atlantis. See how many times he mentions the Aryan. He doesn't use the word Aryans, but he uses the word Aryan 3 times. Aryan root knock, expressive of perishing or destruction. Nox, so he's talking about language there. How much the language of the Vril-ya is akin to Aryan or Indo-Germanic, but like all languages, it contains words and forms which transfer. So he's really into language. So he's basically saying the Vril-ya language has some affinities to Aryan, and that goes along with his thesis at the end, which is, seems clear to me by the roots of their language, descended from the same ancestors as the great Aryan family from blah, 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 blah. So there is a connection to Aryans and this idea that there was this, Aryan-related society that was very powerful underground waiting to come up and take over. They weren't a democracy. They have sages and it's very hierarchical and there's one person in charge. You can start to see why fascists like that idea and found this appealing. And then, of course, the occult people found it appealing because of Vril and all the kind of connections to ancient civilizations and pyramids and prehistoric stuff and, all the esoteric hidden knowledge that would have been passed on and yada, yada, yada. So there you go. That's a little bit about the guy who wrote this. And I think we can move on with that. Thank you for attending my very poor TED Talk, part 3 of my Vril-athon, a little bit about Bulwer-Lytton, and then we can move on to how other people use this concept next time. See you later.